entrepreneur is kind of like you get 60% of the information and then you have to make a decision. That's about what it feels like most of the time. So I'd say that's a challenge. Just like sometimes you get as much information as you can, but you just have to make a decision at some point.
You'll love this interview with Jeremy, an effective entrepreneur who started and currently operates 2 highly successful businesses. Today, he shares what it takes to succeed as an entrepreneur and gives us phenomenal insights you won't want to miss. You'll walk away from this interview with renewed vigor and an applicable roadmap for success in your own life and business. Jeremy.
Yes.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate you doing this with us. We love getting to know different entrepreneurs who do different things, have so many different experiences. I've known you for over a decade now, I think. Mm-hmm. You've been a good buddy of mine, so I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and you've done some cool things. So why don't you just start by telling us what you do and kind of some of the things that you've done up to this point?
Yeah, so I've got a few different things that I dabble in. One, I've got a web development company called Indo Creative, and with that we've been doing custom websites for 13 years now, a little over 13 years. A part of that is I'm also, we have a WordPress plugin called Leaky Paywall. And so that's software for news and magazine publishers to help them with their digital subscriptions. And then another thing I do that I started about 5 years ago, because I wanted to have a kind of a local company, because a lot of that stuff, most of my customers are just kind of, all across the globe. I started a house cleaning company here in Fort Collins, just to kind of provide local employment here in Fort Collins and be able to have customers here locally.
Which is so crazy because you went from software company, right? Which is nothing like cleaning. So why cleaning? How did you get into that?
Yeah, I just wanted to do something different, try to practice and hone my business skills in a different industry, learn. Like I've just always been a curious person, always enjoyed learning. And so I wanted to see if I could apply the same kind of systems thinking that I do in software into a different industry and kind of, learn and grow into something new.
So from a revenue perspective, just give us some high level numbers real quick, just so people understand where you're at. But with the software, kind of what's some of the revenue figures, and then for the cleaning business at this point? I know you're still growing the businesses.
Yeah. So, it kind of depends month to month. Our big thing is recurring revenue. So we try to get that. And so, I would say both upwards of about $500,000 or so, just as kind of ballpark numbers.
So what made you want to become an entrepreneur? I mean, how did you get into, you started a while ago.
Yeah.
So what made you want to be solo entrepreneur and then build these companies?
Yeah, I mean, I've always, it was kind of modeled for me, first off by my grandma. So she owned a flower shop when I was growing up back in Oklahoma. And so I was always just around small business, after school, that's where we'd go hang out. When I started to drive, I was, helped her out delivering flowers and stuff like that. So I've always kind of been around the small business thing. And I had some friends in high school who turned me on to kind of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki stuff. And so just the idea of investments and owning a business as an investment. And so I've always just kind of leaned that way, and then the opportunity presented itself and haven't looked back.
Oh, that's amazing. How old were you when you started your first business?
Well, I had like a landscaping company in high school, right? It feels kind of like what most people do, something like that. Yeah. But if you don't count that, my actual first LLC or whatever you want to call it was in 2010.
2010.
So,
okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So about 14 years now as an entrepreneur.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember we shoveled driveways in high school. I think in the winter you do that, and then summer you mow lawns.
Yeah, we didn't have snow in Oklahoma, so
right.
We did Christmas lights in the winter. That's what I did. So yeah.
So what have been some of the biggest challenges you've had as an entrepreneur? You've built these incredible businesses. They're still growing. I know you have higher visions for them. Mm-hmm. What are some of the challenges that you've faced, that you've overcome, that you've had to deal with, that maybe you didn't expect going into the businesses?
Part of the entrepreneurial journey is you're bouncing ideas off yourself a lot, just because you don't have a team to talk to about things, or the kind of the buck stops with you as far as like making a decision. So I've heard it on a few podcasts I listen to. They've talked about it, how an entrepreneur is kind of like you get 60% of the information and then you have to make a decision. And so that's, that's about what it feels like most of the time. So I'd say that's a challenge. Just like sometimes you get as much information as you can, but you just have to make a decision at some point. And so that's been a challenge. I would say I've, over the years on and off, have kind of gone through the whole burnout phase, like working too much, because there is no off switch. And so learning how to balance that with family, I've got a wife and 2 boys. And so learning how to, make sure I give enough time to them and also give enough time to the business, and find the balance between those 2 things is always a challenge, and always changes based on the season and stuff like that. So it's not like once you've got there that you've got it figured out. But yeah.
Yeah, I know we all go through that as entrepreneurs, but you take it home with you, right? I mean, you're, like you said, you're on 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you balanced that, or how have you learned to do that better over time?
I would say systems is a big part of it. So I know a long time ago we talked about the E-Myth as an example. Years ago, I remember talking about that.
Oh, yeah.
And just like the idea of
that book, by the way, was one of my favorites and changed my perspective on a lot of things. So
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Just like the idea of systems and everything. And so I've always been, systems thinking. How can we put systems in place to cover things and everything? So just some examples of that would be put in systems in place so that I don't no longer check customer emails on the weekends. So that way I can be fully devoted to my family over the weekend. Don't do like nighttime meetings or phone calls or anything like that. So again, I could be present with my family. I would say taking care of myself, like I schedule in workouts and stuff like that so I can take care of me, take care of myself. So I have the energy that I need to be able to devote to the businesses and to my family. I would say another thing is like time block planning, if you're familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hundreds of years old, but kind of the Cal Newport style of the way that he does it has been really influential, and I do that every day. Just like blocking out the day, giving every hour a job as best that I can, and using that to kind of guide my day and make sure I can get everything done and give some structure to the day. Because that's another one of the challenges with an entrepreneur is there's no one telling you what to do, right? And so you kind of have to be your own boss in that way. And so, the time block planner has helped me to be able to really, focus when it's work time, and then be able to turn it off whenever the family's around.
Oh, huge. So hard to do.
Yep.
I feel like I go in phases where sometimes I'm super disciplined in my time blocking,
Mm-hmm.
and then other times I'm just not. And I was gonna ask you, I feel like so many entrepreneurs have these days where you have like a day where you're like, okay, I have my plan, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, but then something derails it, and then at the end of the day you look back and go, what happened today again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say I definitely have those. One thing I implemented a while ago that's been really helpful is I read the book, I think it's One Thing or One or something like that. But anyway, the idea of like having the one thing that you focus on, and if you can get that done, then you've accomplished something. So at the beginning of every week, I have one thing set up for each of the businesses that I need to accomplish that week. And so that way, even if one day gets derailed, as long as I get that one thing done for the week, then I've accomplished what I need to in order to move the ball forward for that particular business. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yep.
So tell us maybe some of the keys to your successes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've done really well in your 2 businesses thus far. I'm sure there'll be more down the road, but what have been some of the keys to your successes? It sounds like you've hit on some of them in your discipline, but what else would you tell us?
So one thing I've had to learn, and I'm still learning, is like how to build a team, because it's at some point you get to where you can't, scale yourself anymore. And so I would say that one thing is having a team be able to take some of the weight off of you. And so that's been really helpful. Worked really hard the last few years to be able to grow a team of people that can handle stuff when I'm gone or away or anything like that. So I would say, learning how to build a team is important. I would say another thing would be like learning what the key performance indicators are for that particular business or that industry. And so knowing what it is you need to look at on a week-to-week basis. It can be easy to get overwhelmed in all of the data And so like knowing what is important to focus on that will actually kind of move the needle in the direction you want it to go. So, you know, having like a weekly report or a weekly scorecard of where those numbers are, and being able to check on those every week and see progress one way or the other. That's been really helpful. Managing more than one business,
Right.
Because it's hard to keep an eye on every single thing that's going on.
Oh, it's hard for most people to do one business, let
Yeah.
alone two. Yeah.
Yep. So having that weekly report, I think, is really helpful for that. So.
And don't you? I know you also do some really good strategizing for the year, then for the month, for the week. Like you've talked about that with me a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what you do for that. You take your wife, you go strategize, kind of do a yearly, thing, and then like,
Yeah.
what do you do? What do you do with that stuff?
Try to kind of strategize and get a big picture for sure. Right now, I'm experimenting with the EOS model, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So it's a book, Traction. Don't remember the author, but easy to find. But anyway, I have a whole system around how to plan out a year, a quarter, a month, a week, all that kind of stuff. And so I've been following that, and that's been really helpful. So I would definitely recommend that system if you're kind of like, having a small business, starting to grow a team to a certain number of employees, and so needing to figure out a good model or system around that.
Oh, that's
works
awesome.
really well.
Yeah, I'll look it up. I'll look that book up for sure. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So one of the last questions we like to ask is, other people watching this, maybe a beginner entrepreneur, maybe somebody who's been doing it for a while, but we're all kind of in it together, learning different things, a lot, but we have so many similarities. Knowing what you've done and the amount of time you've done it, what's like a piece of advice or maybe two pieces of advice that you'd give to other entrepreneurs to help them in their journey?
Yeah, I would say always be learning. Like never feel like you've arrived and you know it all. So like I'm a voracious reader. I read a ton of books because there's always going to be people out there that know a lot more than you. So I try to glean as much information from across the board as I can. And so I would say, learning/reading is a really important thing. And then also like knowing when to celebrate. So taking time to like celebrate the wins. Otherwise, as an entrepreneur, you never arrive. It feels like as soon as you reach a milestone, all you think about is like, okay, what's the next milestone, right? But like taking time to celebrate once you reach a milestone that you've set yourself, whether that's, going out to dinner, taking a vacation, or even something small like, buying a book or something like that. But celebrating that milestone that you've reached, whether it's a revenue goal or whatever, just so you don't just pass it by, because it can get very monotonous and discouraging when you never stop to celebrate. And as soon as you reach a milestone, you just go directly to the next one. It can be, at least for me, it was very mentally challenging to do that. And so when I stopped and learned how to stop and celebrate reaching the milestones, it was really helpful.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, man. This has been great. A lot of good advice. I think people really like this one. You've done so many cool things. I can't wait to see what you do next. I know you want to grow your cleaning business to, your goal right now is what for that business?
Love to get it to $1 million in revenue.
Okay.
That's what we're shooting for. So,
Okay.
yeah.
What about the software side?
The sky's the limit on that one, to be honest.
Nice.
So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be cool to see, man. So appreciate you sharing today and helping us out. This has been really cool.
Awesome.
But we'll have you on again when you
Okay.
do your next thing. It'll be something else, I'm sure. So
Yeah. Awesome.
cool. Well, thanks, Jeremy. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex.